This computer was shipped to me all the way from Louisiana. The customer was very frustrated with the system, took it to a local shop. They told him he needed a new motherboard. They wanted 700 and change. He was like, no thanks, and paid $50 for this useless piece of information. And this is a system the customer built from watching one of my build videos, maybe from 2015. And it worked fine up until a couple of months ago. Now, if you're a computer technician, this is the kind of real-world scenario you can expect to deal with from a customer with regards to interpreting the customer's complaint to then verifying it and repairing the computer. This is word for word what the customer says. This problem may take 10 to 15 minutes before it starts, but what'll happen is the computer will shut down, and once it does start to shut down on its own, it won't stay on very long after that. It seems to happen after it warms up. He says, I have Norton 360 on the computer for protection, and I got a message from Norton that said Norton to be installed for use on Firefox, so I put it on the system, and Firefox would not work after that. I had always used Firefox to get on the internet, but Firefox doesn't seem to work anymore. I tried to uninstall Firefox so that I could reinstall it, but was not able to do that. I just used Microsoft Explorer. I was able to get onto the internet with Explorer. After getting on the internet, I was able to send you an email, but the system started shutting down again after that. I don't think the issue is with Firefox because it was shutting down when Firefox was working and it was shutting down using Internet Explorer. I thought that the issue might be the graphics card, so while testing, I just ran the monitor from the built-in Intel chip, but that did not make any difference. I tried swapping the RAM modules out as you suggested, that also did not work. I've sent the motherboard back in for an RMA and it was replaced and reinstalled, and that did not make any difference. I am at a loss. Well, let's see what's in here. We got a stock heatsink here. Okay. EVGA GeForce GTX 960. It's a Gigabyte GA-H170 D3HP motherboard. He's got all the RAM filled up. He's got a Corsair RM750X, a mechanical drive, a solid state drive, an optical drive. This really does mimic a build I did. He's already pulled the graphics card out and was using onboard video, and still has the exact same symptom. It made no difference. All right, so he's tried a different power supply. He's pulled each RAM module installed one module at a time. Still has the same problem. Had the motherboard replaced, still has the same problem. Swapped the power supply, still has the same problem. Everything on the inside of the computer looks good. FedEx Ground did a good job handling this delicate equipment. Nothing's broken free. There's no loose parts. Cables are on good. Check all the cables. All right, let me switch over to the capture card and we'll power this bad boy on. So let's see, I'll go right here. All right, so where it says no signal, that's going to be replaced with the computer screen. He said it does take 10 to 15 minutes. So let's get it started right now. CPU fan is turning, rear case fan is turning, video card fans are turning. All the screws appear to be in the right place on the motherboard. Everything looks to be mounted correctly. Well, this is not a good sign with how long Windows is taking to boot. So I'll tell you what I want to do. I don't want to ruin your Windows installation. Something's wonky with that. So I'm going to grab a spare hard drive and we're going to do a clean install of Windows just to see if you have a software problem or a hardware problem. That's always the first part of any diagnostic. This just simply isn't going to boot, so I'm going to just turn that off. And I'm going to put the Windows 10 install, plug that into the USB port right here. And then I've got an old OCZ Vertex 4 solid state drive, which is great for testing. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to disconnect your solid state drive so there's no way I can accidentally erase anything on there. And we're going to plug in this one using the same cables. And then your mechanical drive, again, just to make sure that we're not going to potentially harm any files, I'm just going to disconnect the data cable off of that. So there's just, this will be the only drive hooked up. And it's a nice little safety net so that I can move forward with confidence, knowing I can change anything right now. I can format it, I can do whatever I want, I'm free to experiment. And then once I get it resolved, then I can revisit. Okay, okay. And let's see if it's gonna boot. Not quite sure why it didn't give me the boot menu. But it's booting into my Windows 10, which was a previous install. Which means it's gonna have to load a bunch of drivers. I'd rather do a clean install, but you know what? This may be good enough. Let's take a look at the hardware monitor. Let's take a look at these CPU temps and the temps overall. So here on this flash drive, we can copy that application over and we can monitor these temps. And you know what, let's throw Prime 95 on there as well, just so I can stress it out and see if this is a heat-related issue. HW info. Oh, I think it just did it. I think that's exactly what he was talking about. It just reset itself. You just saw it happen right there. The whole thing just shut down on me. Now it's just turned back on again. Now this is a good sign. This means that we're not having a software related problem. Let me get this thing booted up real quick and see if I can get the temp reading. Well, it may not even boot now. It's interesting that it just shuts right down like that. Let's cut the power here. And let's take a look at what it looks like underneath this CPU. You know, the thermal compound looks okay on there. I don't visually see anything wrong with that. It's decent coverage. Maybe not the best coverage, but should be good enough. Just for grins and giggles, I'll go ahead and clean this off and reapply thermal compound because it's cheap and only takes a minute, and that's it. Okay. That's up and running. Let me go ahead and pull this Windows 10 install since I'm not going to use it. At least not yet. That can sit over there. Let's power it back on. I honestly don't think that's the problem, but let's power it back on and see what she does. Flip the switch back to on. Let's go back to the capture screen. Power back on. Make sure that that fan is spinning okay in there. Yeah, it spins good. And it just restarted itself, didn't it? If I can get this thing to stay open long enough, I can run the temperature software. Let's go to this PC. We'll go to this drive. Oh, no, it just can't get there fast enough. It wouldn't matter. I mean, clearly something serious is happening here. So let me just shut this back off. So I'm going to disconnect power here. Boy, I'll tell you what, that did not feel good. I want to reseat that. How about this one? Let me just double check what he's got. And I'll tell you something else I'm going to do. I'm going to disconnect his fans. And I'm going to disconnect his front panel header. Because if he's got a stuck switch, that will also create a similar symptom. And I want to just grab an external switch for this. And let's turn it on again, see if that made any difference whatsoever. I gotta use the switch up here. Okay, just checking to see that you're paying attention. We're gonna push this little 430 watt power supply. As long as we're not doing anything too intense with the graphics, it should be enough power to bring us to the desktop without any issue. Okay, let's see what happens. Ooh, 80's a little warm, a little toasty. Let's see how hot we can make it. Gonna run prime 95. Here we go, we're slamming all the cores at 100%. And we have not rebooted yet. Isn't that interesting? And you should be able to see the fan spinning, you know it's running. And I'm going to pull this power switch off of here. All right, that's my test power switch. And I'm going to put his front, well, first I want to, he's got the Q connector on here, and I don't know that this is wired up correctly either. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all of the front port wires off of this Q connector, and we're going to handle them one at a time. I'm going to start here with his power switch, and I'm just going to plug his power switch on all by itself. And let's see if the system shuts itself off. I'd be kind of curious about that. We're going to go back to both modes here. So far everything's still working. So now I'm going to add the reset switch. I'm going to take the power switch off since it hasn't made any difference, and I'm going to plug in the reset switch. And that's going to go right there. Okay, we got reset plugged in. Temps are looking good for Prime 95 running full. Oh, look what just happened. Got a bad reset switch. Problem solved. I'm going to plug all the front port umbilicals back on except for the reset switch. Okay, that looks good. Let's go back over to the desktop. Let's start it again. Okay, full bore. And what time is it right now? It's 12:48. Let's see if we can make it for 20 minutes without a reboot, because we've never done that before. I suspect we're going to do just fine. Okay, I think we're about at 20 minutes, right? Everything looks good. It's not rebooting anymore. It's working like it should. And let's close this down. Oops, close that. Let's stop Prime 95. Give that CPU a chance to cool down. It cools down pretty quickly. And let's shut the computer down. So let's go back to the main camera so you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm going to just leave everything alone. I'm just going to change one thing. I'm going to pull the power switch off, and I'm going to put the reset switch where the power switch was, which is difficult without a flashlight. Okay, so the reset switch is hooked up, and I'm not touching anything. Let's see if the machine just magically turns itself on. So far, it's not doing anything. So far, it's staying off the way it should. It's behaving as it should. This thing could sit here for 15 or 20 minutes before this could happen. So I'm going to use the power switch. I'm going to use the reset switch to turn it on. So I'm going to manually hit the reset. It's not doing anything. Reset switch is not working. The reset switch and the power switch are exactly alike. The only thing that differentiates them is the label, right? The reset switch has a little circle on it, and the power switch has like a different symbol. But behind those symbols is the same type of switch. They're exactly identical in every way, shape, and form except for the words that are put on them. And those words dictate where they get plugged into. But physically, they're twins. Try again. No, I got nothing. Now I'm going to put the power switch there instead. And I'll hit the power button. Fires right up. So it's definitely the reset switch. And on this case, the way we get to that is this front comes off of here. And so this whole piece, there's a couple of screws, and these are your two switches that are hidden behind the front panel. And you can see he's really worked those switches a lot. He's rubbed the paint right off of it. Another good reason to always just leave the computer on. There's less wear and tear on the buttons. So behind this is a circuit board. So you can't just swap out the switch. You'd have to resolder and everything. So you call Corsair, they're gonna mail us a new whole front piece right here, and that has all the cables and wires for the USB, the audio, and the power switch and LEDs. It's all just one piece. It slaps in 5 minutes. That's all there is to changing that out. Piece of cake. This is not a $700 repair. There's 3 screws that hold this in. There's one here, one here, one here, and this whole panel comes off. And before I do that, we just want to remove the front port I/O right here, which is connected to the front panel. Our front panel switches, obviously, and our USB 3.0. That's it. Let's go. Let's do this thing. Now, by the way, I could just plug this in and test it before installing it, but honestly, the install is so easy. Why? It doesn't really make the job much harder to just change it out. That's what I'm gonna do, and that's why. I'm gonna get that screw there though, because I need that. Okay. That's our old one. I'll just put that right there. So now I'm running the cable right up through the top. This USB 3 cable is the thickest one, and it's got the largest plug on it, so it's the most difficult one to feed through. So I just want to do that one first before all the other cables are in the way. There it goes. And I'm just going to pull them all through one at a time here. This is our front port audio. Okay, there's our front port audio cable going right through. Just thread them in there. And finally, the power switch, reset switch, power LED, and hard drive LED. We'll just pull those through. There we go. You see, there's really nothing to replacing this. I'm just going to put that screw right there. Just keep it loose for right now. And we'll put this screw right here. Just like so. Very good. And then I can just take and rerun these cables. I'm not really worried about the cable management at this point. We just want to see if it's going to work. So let's put the USB 3 cable back on. I'll put that one right there. And our front port audio cable, we can run that right down through here. And let's see, the missing pin, it goes on the bottom, so that goes way down here. Very dark and difficult to see, even when I'm standing in front of it, so I don't expect you guys to be able to see it any better than I can. And then finally, the switches for the hard drive, LED, power switch, and reset switch, which were, the reset switch was the cause of the problem. I'll just go ahead and put the bezel back on, just to make it look pretty. I mean, one way or another, it's got to go back on today anyway. And we'll put the optical drive back in. Put the switch on, hit the power button. We're lighting up, power light lights up. Everything looks good here. I'm going to grab my little flash drive that's got Prime 95 on it. We're going to plug it into the USB port. We're going to test that the USB port works. Yeah, there's the USB port. Let me check the other USB on the front panel just to make sure that it works. Back to this PC. Yeah, we're good. Let's start monitoring the temps on this so you can see the difference the Hyper 212 Evo makes over the stock cooler, because that's what we're about to do next. Everything seems to be running good. System is not randomly rebooting anymore. That's a good sign. Now we're going flat out 100% on all the cores, which most end users would never do this for more than a brief second or a few seconds, but we're going to run it full bore 100%. It's 2:30, it's exactly 2:30 in the afternoon. We'll let this run until 2:45, and we'll see what our maximum temps are. Then we're going to shut it down. We're going to replace the Hyper 212, replace the stock fan that's in there with the Hyper 212 Evo right here. And we'll do the same test again and compare temps. Ooh, oh, wow, look at those temps. So the throttling temp is going to be 100 degrees Celsius. You should never see 100 degrees. The CPU will shut itself down. Well, it'll shut cores down to keep itself within its operational range. So I'll tell you what, that's enough of a test. I don't want to keep running it that hot, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this. All good. So now I'm going to unplug and unplug. Safety first. And we are going to install the Hyper 212 Evo right now. And you can see there's good thermal coverage there of the paste. This heatsink is still pretty warm, but look at how shallow this heatsink is. It's very inadequate for that. I'm very disappointed that Intel did this. I find on the i3s and the i5s, these work fine, but on the i7s, a Hyper 212 all the way. And it wouldn't hurt you to have a Hyper 212 on any CPU, to be honest, but not as necessary. There we go. That's better. All right, and then I'm just gonna set this in. I'm going to take the fan off right now because the fan's going to get in the way of us securing the screws. Power on. Okay, fan's turning, fan is turning. Everything's moving in the right direction. GPU fans are turning. All right, let's do the same test again. So we're going to bring up hardware monitor. This is a free utility you can download. Just Google it. It'll take you right to the page there. Let's bring that up, and then we'll load up the sensor part to bring up our temps, which is right there. Scroll down a bit. All right, so here's our temps right in here. And then I can bring up Prime 95. Just set that there. And once again, we're going to do the exact same test. Going with all the defaults, just click OK. We're at all the cores at 100%. And we'll just bring our temps and we'll let that run for 15 minutes. So the time right now is 3:30 exactly on the nose. It's been 15 minutes, they tell me. All right, let me take a look at these temps after 15 minutes. Maximum temps, what am I seeing? A max of 80, it looks like. Right there, I see 80, 81. Yeah, it's about 20 degrees Celsius cooler. And it's just as quiet. It's not any louder than it was. Looking at these 4 cores right here. And that's a very cool temperature. Very, very cool. I'm actually very surprised. 19 degrees Celsius on core 0 on an idle is fantastic. That's really, really good. So let's see. Yeah, these numbers right here, first 4 cores. And then right here, the distance to max is how much hotter it would have to get, how far away we are from hitting the throttle. All right, and there you go. So that's a real world test right there of, you know, actual real world cooling differences. And you don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't have to buy high-end thermal compound. You don't have to buy a fancy all-in-one cooler. You know, if you're overclocking and you're going to extremes, then you need to go to extremes on your cooling. But just for ordinary computer use, a simple minor upgrade like that is relatively inexpensive, not too difficult to do. So there it is. So it's unfortunate for poor old Bill there in Louisiana to have to spend upwards of $250 to $300 on shipping, right? Because it's basically $125 each way, $135 each way. But in the end, you know, this has been causing a problem for 2 months, and the computer's been useless to him. And he wasted money at the local shop. He wasted time with Gigabyte and the expense of sending that back and the time he spent into replacing it. He bought a power supply for $100. You saw how fast that diagnostic went and how much more accurate my diagnostic was than anybody Bill's had taken it to. All the people he's spoken to, I was sort of his last ditch. That's all he's got. And I'm not charging Bill for the work. I hope to make the money here on the video by sharing this process with you, and Bill just will cover the shipping. I don't ask for anything else. All right, I'll see y'all again very soon. Until then, bye for now.